Ever feel like, you're really craving something, like you shouldn't, but you just can't help yourself?
Oh, absolutely. We've all been there. That's your brain's reward system in action. And today we're diving into that system, exploring how it can sometimes lead to addiction.
So let's start with the basics. What exactly is addiction?
Addiction, it's often misunderstood. People think it's a choice, a weakness, but it's actually a chronic disease. It's like having, say, diabetes or heart disease. It's about how the brain gets, well, kind of rewired over time.
Rewired.
Yeah, imagine your brain is this incredibly complex network of pathways. Every time we do something pleasurable, like enjoying a good meal, dopamine, that's the feel-good chemical, it gets released, lighting up specific pathways.
So it's like dopamine is leaving a trail saying, hey, this was good. Let's do that again.
Exactly, you
Yeah.
got it. The more we repeat the behavior, the stronger that pathway gets. Imagine painting a dirt road. The more you drive over it, the smoother it becomes. Well, addiction basically hijacks this reward pathway.
Okay, so whether we're talking about like drugs or alcohol, or even things like gambling or, say, excessive social media use, they all kind of tap into this system.
Precisely. They
Oh.
trigger these huge surges of dopamine, way more than usual. So those pathways, they become superhighways, making you crave more and more.
Wow, so that's why it can be so hard to stop.
Right. And this is where things get even more complicated because when you try to quit, those dopamine floods, they dry up. And your brain, well, it freaks out.
It'll take a withdrawal, right?
Exactly. Your brain throws a tantrum. It craves that dopamine rush. And that can show up in tons of ways. Like you might feel physically sick, nauseous, get headaches, or it might be more emotional, anxiety, even depression.
That makes a lot of sense. It's really not just about willpower.
Not at all. It's about understanding that the brain has been, well, almost reprogrammed. It takes time, support, and often professional help to kind of rewire those pathways.
It really highlights the importance of like compassion and understanding when we talk about addiction.
Absolutely. It's a disease, not a character flaw. And recognizing that is so, so important.
So we've talked about substance addiction, but what about behavioral addictions? Are they really that different?
That's a great question. And the answer is yes and no. The mechanism, that dopamine reward system, it's essentially the same.
Hmm.
But the way it manifests the behaviors themselves can be, well, much more diverse.
Can you give us some examples?
Sure. Take gambling, for instance. The thrill of a potential win, that unpredictable reward, it triggers those dopamine floods. Or take online gaming. The sense of achievement, the social connection, it can be very reinforcing.
And what about something like, say, shopping addiction?
That's another good example. Finding a great deal, that feeling of excitement when you buy something new. Again, it all comes back to dopamine.
So it seems like anything that triggers that pleasure response has the potential to become addictive.
Exactly. But it's important to remember that not everyone who enjoys these things is addicted.
Right. It's about that line between enjoyment and, well, compulsion.
Exactly. When it starts controlling your life, when it's having negative consequences, that's when it crosses over into addiction.
So, as we wrap up here, is there one key thing you'd want our listeners to remember about addiction?
I think the biggest takeaway is this. Addiction is a complex medical condition, not a moral failing. Understanding that is the first step to more effective treatment, more compassionate relationships, and just a more supportive society as a whole.
We've taken a deep dive today into addiction, exploring the science behind those cravings and compulsions. As you go about your day, maybe think about your own relationship with reward and pleasure. How can understanding this science help you approach those everyday temptations with a bit more awareness and self-compassion?
Don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on your notification bell for more.